Hello and welcome to Monocle on Culture with me, Robert Bound. On today's programme, we're rounding up the best of the current crop of cinema as we approach year's end. We'll hear from the director Steve McQueen about his new film Blitz, we'll discuss its merits, and then we'll plunge into a roundup of the best of the rest in cinemas right about now. That's all coming up right here on Monocle on Culture. Now, a new Steve McQueen film is always an event, and the multi-awarded British filmmaker's back catalogue is much admired. From the silver to the small screen, McQueen's work is a masterful blend of characters and situations full of humanity and the rub of history, all executed with an artist's eye. His new film is Blitz, set in World War II London. Saoirse Ronan is Rita, the young mother to George, played by new talent Elliot Heffernan. Rita has to pack George off to the safety of the countryside, but George isn't convinced by promises of walks and farmyards, and after an emotional goodbye, the boy jumps from the train and tries to pick his way back to London. It's a journey full of the perils and some of the joys of self-discovery, where he meets rogues and racism, but also makes vital friends along the way. And our very own Monocle's Fernando Augesto Pacheco had a chat with Steve McQueen ahead of the release of Blitz, but before that, here's a clip from the film. In this scene, George is trying to understand why his mum Rita can't come with him on an adventure that is just for children.
Why can't you come with me?
Sweetheart, I told you it's an adventure for children only. Grown-ups not allowed. But it's going to be great. You're going to make new friends.
My friends are here.
Yeah, well, you play games in the countryside. That'd be nice. There'll be cows and there'll be horses.
But they smell. I want to stay with you.
Yeah, I know. It's only until all this is over. And then the schools will open again and life will get back to normal, I promise.
Please, Mum. Don't send me away.
Steve McQueen, first of all, what a pleasure meeting you. Blitz, what a fantastic film. But first of all, Steve, for me, as a foreigner living in the UK, I know the Blitz has such a powerful connotation for all people living here in the UK. What was your thoughts about the Blitz before even you made the film, even when you were growing up here in London?
Defiance against the Nazis. I think that was everyone's takeaway. Again, defiance against sort of tyranny in a way. Step up a lip. Keep calm and carry on situation. Again, during my research, you sort of dig some shallow digging, and you find out it was slightly different. I mean, there's the front of what that is, but also there's the reality of actually what was happening.
That's precisely what I also like in the film, because, this kind of stiff upper lip attitude. But the UK, the situation was not very rosy as well. It was not everyone in it together. There was a lot of that. But it was also a difficult time. There were kind of racism. Society was not as rosy and united as some people make us think.
No, it wasn't. I mean, again, my picture, I wanted to bring the reality of the environment as well, as much as, again, as I said before, as much as one was fighting the enemy, which was the Nazis, we were fighting ourselves again. Yeah, I mean, lots of things were embedded within this narrative in sense of way of the actual narrative of the times that people lived in, which through colonialism and so forth.
But at the same time, let's talk about something positive. One of my favorite scenes in the film is when Rita...
Oh, this is all positive.
Oh, yeah, this is all positive.
The truth is always positive.
Oh, yes, I agree with you. When Rita is dancing with her partner in a club, I mean, this is such a vivacious scene. That was beautiful and brought some color to it as well.
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, I mean, this is the reality of what was going on actually during the 30s, because there's obviously a little time before the actual, in the scene, is a little bit of time before the Blitz. There were, like I said, there were lots of black clubs in central London and so forth. So, yeah, things were happening. There was a lot of people who were mixing, a lot of people who were sort of, being introduced to each other. There was a liberation within sexuality and whatnot. So, yeah, a lot of things were going on, absolutely.
I'm curious about your kind of initial ideas for the film, or when you start having the idea to do a film like this. Was it perhaps your experience in Iraq as well. It did give you some sort of knowledge about people in situation of war.
That's right. That was a starting point because majority of people in the world imagine how they experience war is through the media, and it's very abstract. Of course, it's sort of normally very graphic. It's however you receive your news on your phone or your computer, on the television, or newspaper. It's very sort of again abstract. It's not sort of seen as something which is real as such. And I wanted to sort of, my experiences in Iraq, being actually in a war zone, I wanted to bring that to a situation which was much more, obviously more familiar to people like myself, which will be at home in London, in the UK.
I want to talk about the cast because Elliot Heffernan playing George, I mean, what a revelation. How was it the process to cast the character? Well, let's be honest, he's central to the film. I mean, he's... Difficult.
I mean, you write the script and all of a sudden, oh my goodness gracious. Oh, that's not so bad. Oh my God. Well, does George exist? Does this character, does this person exist? Myself and the casting director, Nina Gold, through our net, broad and wide, open audition. And then there was George, through Elliot Heffernan, and then he was just incredible. I mean, there was a stillness to him. He was almost like a silent movie star in a way. The way he was, the way he acted, you wanted to engage with his face, his huge eyes, and again, it was just one of those, there's a magnetism to him, and that was it. And yeah, it was incredible. He's never acted before, he's not an actor.
That's crazy. Talking about George, that character, is it true that you've seen a picture of a young boy from the period? That's fascinating because, of course, the film is based on true events, but you had to imagine a George in your head, right? Was that picture the inspiration for George?
That was the starting point in some ways, of course, after being the war artist. I wanted to make a picture about the war during that time. As soon as I saw that photograph, I thought that was my way, and basically it was a photograph of a young black child, mixed-race child, obviously had one parent black, white, one parent black, standing at a railway station waiting to be evacuated. I thought, he was my in. Seeing war through a child's eyes.
I mean, the cast of the film is superb. Of course, Saoirse Ronan, I mean, what an amazing role she played. But one, Benjamin Clementine as Ife, I mean, what a dignified character. I think he's one of my favorite characters. Fantastic, and I think because
he's a good character.
He's a good. Was he based on someone from real life?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's based on someone called Ite Epion, who was an actual air warden. But previously, before that, he was a law student, and when war broke out, he became an air warden. He signed up, and he's based on real characters. There's a speech in the film where he talks about race and how people are trying to divide us, which is actually a real speech he gave in air raid shelter. Because again, it was just one of those things where doing the research brought up so many interesting people and situations that I thought we could incorporate into our picture. But these situations, these characters had to serve the story, which is a story of Rita and George trying to reunite with his family.
And there are a lot of elements to the film. Of course, there's this beautiful adventure section when George goes in his train journey, he meets new friends, but there's a little bit of horror that's seen at Café de Paris. I mean, that's quite haunting in a way. How was it quite hard to do that scene, especially with George, a child, doing that?
No, it's actually quite fun, actually. I mean, you got to keep it light in order to do those harder things. Again, you got to keep it light, and again, it's all about what you capture on camera. And it is a horrendous scene, but again, when you keep it light, things become more real in a way. Yeah, if you put the weight on it, it becomes too gravitational. And when you keep it light, you bring, as in the process, where things become much more actual. So that was very important, how you direct that and how you balance that with him, because again, as a child, being confronted with death is a difficult situation.
Another scene that really impressed me is the beginning, the initial scene with the hose. I mean, it's powerful. It's a very important beginning of the film. What did you want to show with that kind of hose? Because it's really, it looked like, I think I read in a critic said that it looked like a monster in a way, that hose.
Yeah, I suppose it's a monster inside us. Well, look, again, I think there's consequences of war. I mean, again, if I wanted to get into the picture immediately because this title of Blitz, okay, let's get into it. But as much as, again, as I said before, as much as we're fighting our enemies, we're fighting ourselves. In some ways, the hose becomes almost like a metaphor to that, chaos and that sort of situation where we are not even in control of ourselves as far as fighting our enemies, fighting ourselves rather than anything else.
And I was talking as well that there was the elements of adventure, but there were big scenes, the tube station being flooded. That was quite a big scene, right, in terms of kind of budget and kind of how was quite difficult, I presume, that one as well.
Yeah, look, again, using George in some ways is to sort of show us a glimpse of London as he goes through. We get these sort of glimpses of what London was, so you could build a bigger picture. His sort of encounters as such. And then when we get to the flooding of the railway station, again, yes, it was a large undertaking, but what was interesting about it is the reality of what happened. I mean, we're building up to that moment where we're saying the subway is the safest place to be, and then it becomes the most dangerous place to be.
And looking back from the beginning of the interview, I was saying, Blitz has your film, a refreshing take on that period in the UK. But do you feel that the UK is doing this quite a lot with events that happened from the past? Because there are a lot of discussions still, right? Do you think this will bring discussion?
Well, look, what I'm interested in, really, for me, I don't know about what you just said in some ways, but the fact of the matter is not so long ago, this summer, there was race riots, and I think that Blitz talks a lot about that. Our picture talks a lot about that, and again, unfortunately, what we have right now in the world, Sudan, Ukraine, Lebanon, Palestine, Israel, whatever. It seems that the world's on fire, and I think. Look, this film could have been relevant at any time in the past, how many years, but it seems it's so much more urgent now because of what's going on. And, race is a huge thing. Race is a huge thing. It's a huge thing in the sense of what each individual one of these wars are about race. So it's not just something which is something that, it's a side topic. It is the topic. It is the topic because it's the thing that is dividing us. It's the thing that people are fighting. Look what we're hearing from the States. Look what we're hearing from all over the world. Race and difference. Immigration. Certain immigration's fine, others aren't. Certain people are looked after, certain people aren't. It's just how it is. Certain people are more interested, are more sort of, how can I say, treated better than others just because of race. I mean, that's how it is. And the whole war is on race. I mean, you're from Brazil. You should know a lot about race. And it's still unsolved.
Absolutely. And it's interesting for someone like me who perhaps didn't know as much about the period that the Blitz, the UK was already diverse. There was already kind of, people from different countries here. So people sometimes portray as a new thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is all. I knew these kind of questions will come up, but that's why it's all steeped in historical research. This is how Central London looked like. My historical advisor Josh Levine said, London was cosmopolitan. There was a very large Chinese community here, black community, Asian community. That's how it was.
Amazing. And Steve, just I have here one question about the score. I thought the score was fantastic, and film plays an important role in most of your films as well. What can you say about the score for Blitz?
Well, I think the music element of Blitz, again, I had the dynamic duo of Hans Zimmer and Nicholas Britell. I mean, Hans did these sort of...
What a duo.
Yeah, I mean, we used this is the same dynamic duo as 12 Years a Slave. And, Hans, again, he has his history about the music, and his mother was here for the Blitz. She was evacuated from Germany. 5 years later, after the war finished, she went back, to Germany as acted as a translator for the Americans. Her husband, Hans's father, she met when she went back, and he passed away 5 years after. Hans had died, and he went to boarding school. So Hans had an idea. He understood, in some ways, that separation and war. So it was amazing what he did. It was it was from the heart immediately. And with Nicholas Britell, again, talking about music of that time, which was the music that corralled people, that lulled people, that gave people some kind of hope. And to think about those songs, which was like, Sunny Side of the Street, or we did a song called Better Days, and of course, Winter's Coat, which comes from, again, that came from the initial idea about my father leaving me his winter coat. The whole idea of that absence, and when you put that coat on, it's almost like a hug, an embrace. And Saoirse amazingly singing that song in front of these women in the factory, and she translating it in such a way, because every woman in that situation would understand what's going on. If it was a father or a brother or an uncle or whoever, they would understand that loss and that textual sort of connection to what she was singing about.
You mentioned Saoirse. I mean, I do have to say that she played the mother of a mixed race kid, and she did that quite wonderfully. I wonder if there was an extra kind of research for her as well, because that probably would bring the different elements to it. What do you think?
No, I think love is enough.
Yeah.
We talked love is enough. I think we talked a lot about her relationship with her mother, and it was very much about those two people. And again, they were a team in that way. They were sort of, they were not just mother and daughter, they were friends, and I think that was the thing. It's just about love over anything else, yeah.
And Paul Weller, what a fantastic character as this kind of beautiful pianist as well.
Yeah, Paul was amazing again. I mean, again, you could talk about Paul in that context as well, because Paul has 8 children, and 2 of his first children are mixed race, are black children. And when Paul sends George off, again, we're saying goodbye, and what do we say about bullies? All pants, no trousers. He knows when George is leaving, what he might entail on his journey, racism and so forth. So there's a depth to the character, depth to who he was, because there had to be, because the payoff at the end with his situation had to be sort of heartfelt. Absolutely.
Steve McQueen, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And that was Steve McQueen speaking to Fernando Augesto Pacheco. And, as luck would have it, Faye is here with me in the studio, alongside writer, film critic, dare I say it, friend of the show, Leila Latif. Leila, lovely to see you, and to you, Faye, of course, as well. Let's get into the Blitz then. I've read around this film in bits and bobs as well, and certain bits of the community seem to think that this might be McQueen light. Am I right, Faye?
Even if it is, I think it's still a good thing. It's still a great film. But I think for me personally, what was interesting about Blitz is that I didn't grow up here in the UK. So I didn't, to be fair with you, I didn't know much about the Blitz. All I know is that the Brits were very patriotic about it. When you read the newspapers. So for me, the little surprise here is that, remember, it's still a Steve McQueen film. So there will be some critiques here and there. And although it's not all the time, this critique's not like, this is not 12 Years a Slave or one of his previous films as well. But, not everything was rosy in UK society at the time. There were a lot of racism, and I quite like that he pointed out. So yeah, it's light, but I thought it was excellent. I mean, the production levels of it, the acting was amazing. I mean, the young boy, I have to be honest, Rob, I don't usually like kids in cinema, but I mean, Elliot Heffernan, what a great actor. And he told me that's his first kind of role in a film. Yeah. It's amazing.
Well, let's talk about that later. What about the casting of Blitz? Because there's some obviously, Saoirse Ronan never puts a foot wrong, but there's some obviously unusual casting in it, perhaps, as well. So, yeah, what's your take on that?
I mean, it's interesting with Steve McQueen because at the beginning of his career, he used Michael Fassbender quite a few times, but pretty much since then, he doesn't really reuse actors. So every time it's this big, fresh crop of people. And though Saoirse Ronan's husband, Jack Lowden, was in his film Mangrove, aside from that, pretty much everybody's having their first encounter with him. And I think he's really proved himself as someone who it's material first. These are people that are just perfect for each role. So whether it's, Stephen Graham as kind of a Fagin-like figure that emerges out of the Blitz, or this wonderful child actor, Harris Dickinson, quite a small role, or Benjamin Clementine, the musician, who kind of plays this kind of noble, heroic figure. Everybody feels that they were perfectly selected for their part.
Yeah, and you mentioned Stephen Graham playing a Fagin-like figure. There is a sort of, despite it's set in 1940s London, there is a Dickensian quality to this London. Is that something that was purposeful, or is it simply a through line from that you got to pick a pocket or two-ness that is just built into the capital, I wonder?
Yeah, I wonder, because I think that it's very difficult to do things that are quintessentially London without them feeling quite twee, because we're kind of so used to it as a cinematic background. But I think he does more than just kind of ground it in something a little bit Dickensian, because one of the crazy things that was happening during the Blitz is people had barely recovered from their PTSD from the First World War. These are people that are kind of, it's not just a wound, it's rubbing salt into an already unhealed wound. And I think that was actually some of the more interesting things that it captured. I mean, and also with Saoirse Ronan characters, she's mourning her mother. Everybody's coming into this damaged, and then on top of that, you've got the Blitz.
Yeah, for sure. And just finally on Blitz, then, British audiences particularly might have an affinity with this Small Axe series, which was so wonderful, which was obviously a small screen commission. It was BBC commission, first played on the iPlayer, on the TV, and then the iPlayer. This was something that's been commissioned by Apple TV with a smallish cinematic release crop as well. So what about that? Does it feel big or small? I wonder if it feels like what the commissioning process might have been behind it, Faye.
It felt quite big to me, actually. There is, I've mentioned there were some perhaps very difficult scenes to make when the tube station was flooded. It was quite impressive. It felt, at times, besides all the elements we've mentioned, it felt like an adventure film as well. When the young George, he goes on a train journey, and so there are a lot of elements to that film.
An Odyssey kind of structure to it, right?
Yeah, and that maybe you can say there's a little bit Dickensian as well, but I like all of those elements. It felt very big to me. And, it's still a Steve McQueen film, so the score was fantastic. There was a lot of kind of thought behind it.
I wonder even if that question can simply be done in terms of budget, Leila, rather than actually the ambition, the small or big screen ambition of a film like this, I guess.
Well, yeah, no, I think this feels very much designed to be watched on the big screen, but then maybe with that slight precursor of pretty good film for Christmas Eve to watch, right? And it feels like a cross-generational pleaser, but I think that should be the second viewing of it, I've got to say.
Nice. Well, you guys were obviously lucky enough to see it on the big screen first time around. That was new from Steve McQueen, and that was Blitz. Now we're going to rip through a few titles as we head towards the last 10 minutes of the show. Faye and Leila have both picked a handful each, and I know that you, before we switched on the microphones, you've got a lot to say about each other's choices. So we're going to start off with Sean Baker's new one. It's called Honora. Faye, you've chosen this one. I mean, I love Sean Baker's work, so much humanity bursting out of every frame of his work. What turned you onto this?
I think all I can say about Honora is believe the hype. I mean, I was reading so many incredible reviews, and you're right, Rob. I mean, he's very human in his films, from Tangerine to The Florida Project. And again, I was thrilled by the story of the sex worker from Brooklyn who meets the son of an oligarch. There's so much to it, and the comedy is amazing, but the drama, of course I'm not going to mention what happens, but the end of the film, I think, wow, my heart kind of almost stopped in a way. So yes, believe the hype. I think it deserves all the awards it can get. I really, really enjoyed Honora. What do you think, Leila?
I think particularly Mickey Madison. I mean, I almost feel like an old school Hollywood executive being like, this girl's a star.
Yes.
But this girl's a star. She's incredible in it.
Yeah. So performances. Sean Baker just seems to have that knack, right? People, again, amazing in terms of casting. He's got such a brilliant eye for what people will look like in his pictures, I guess, right? Uncanny.
Yeah, I mean, Simon Rex in Red Rocket is just one of the most inspired bits of casting I think I've ever seen.
So good. Still need a shower after that. Luca Guadagnino's Queer, Faye, was your next choice. Looks beautiful. Is it a beautiful experience to experience?
That's an interesting one. I love Luca Guadagnino. I have to say, Challengers earlier this year. I thought it was fun, exciting, good music. I had high expectations for Queer. It's certainly not a bad film. Daniel Craig's excellent in the main role. But I don't know, Rob, it's going to be a very personal reply. It didn't connect with me for some reason. I thought visually it was very interesting, based in the novella by William Burroughs, So, there's the setting, Mexico in the 50s, so you kind of feel very much that you're there. But perhaps it was a little bit too long. It just didn't connect with me. But I think it's kind of a divisive film for some. It deserves, I think Daniel Craig is very brave, an amazing role, but yeah, didn't connect. Not my favorite Guadagnino, I have to say.
This was another Venice one for you, Leila, right?
It was, and I think it's the first time it's happened to me.
Good place to watch it, maybe.
Perfect place to watch it, but I think it's the first time that one director has had two films on my top of the year list. This and Challengers, I both absolutely adored them. I love kind of films that have kind of central characters that are complicated and unlikable. I actually think Daniel Craig's character is on every substance known to man throughout, and I actually think that's quite difficult to do well, and he was absolutely heartbreaking. And I found the whole central message about kind of wanting to love someone but wanting to read their mind and be connected in a more intimate way quite moving. So I think, I can see why it's divisive. I think it's not going to be for everyone, but I'm fully on board with Queer.
And the sets with an S is what are vital to this film as well. We should point out there's an amazing story in World of Interiors this month, which is just about the sets, which I think were all created on La Cinecittà film set in Rome. So check it out. if you also of Fernando's way of mind and love magazines as much as we all do here. I've got Oscar buzz written in brackets here for Walter Salazar's new film, I'm Still Here. Another one for you at Venice, but what was your take on this, Faye?
I picked two films actually that I haven't seen it. I know, but I'll tell you what, Rob, I'm Brazilian and, I love the Oscars. I love the award season. It's been a while since a Brazilian film had so much buzz around. And this story, although I haven't seen the film, I'm Still Here, is based on a memoir that most Brazilians know. It's been a bestseller in the country. The story of a mother, Eunice Paiva. Her husband basically disappears during the military dictatorship. So even if Brazilians haven't seen this film, everybody knows the story. It's quite haunting. So I'm dying to see her. Fernanda Torres, she's an amazing actress. And it's funny because not many people know she's actually a comedy actress. She used to be in soap operas, being funny. She's incredible. So if she's nominated, I think it's very well deserved. I have a feeling Leila liked the film as well.
Yeah,
so.
I remember you had a feeling this punched out of the screen, right? Her performance.
Like the film, love her. She is absolutely phenomenal in this. But it's a really interesting film. I mean, that uses her really well because sort of, the big terrible thing that's going to happen with the husband that is going to be taken away sort of happens at the midpoint. And the first half of the film is so intriguing to me because it's like they're having this beautiful, really happy life in the 70s and their gorgeous family and they live near the beach and their wonderful home and she's always making a souffle. And but like you just have that whole kind of like creeping authoritarianism coming in, that there's just like the sound of a siren, the sound of a helicopter, a tank will go down the street at the back of the beach and stuff like that. Yeah. And so I think the way that he sort of builds suspense is so clever. But like, yes, every award that they invent new awards for Fernando Torres, like honestly.
Perfect. That is I'm Still Here, Walter Salles. Your last choice, Faye, is Baby Girl from the director Helene Rein. Now this melds in with a topic that's been big on your radar for this year, which is the demise of sexy cinema.
It's back.
It's back, okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's back and it's more exciting than ever.
Yeah.
Because it's all sorts. It's not in the past, like the golden age of the erotic thriller. But now, it's directed by a woman. Nicole Kidman plays a high-powered CEO having an affair with a younger intern. She won Best Actress in Venice. And I love Nicole Kidman. And actually, I want to point out listeners to read Leila's amazing piece on Nicole Kidman, right? You wrote a few months ago.
Yeah.
I think she's brilliant. And I think she's an actress, but she's also behind the scenes. She produces a lot. She works with a lot of female directors. So, I'm a big fan of Nicole Kidman. And yeah, I'm glad sex is back.
Leila, it's mouth-watering stuff, as Faye puts it. This is not one of your top picks of the year, I think, as well, is it? Or is it certainly a Venice pick?
I think the thing that's amazing about Baby Girl is it feels to be respect and really love the erotic thriller, that sort of age of like Basic Instinct and things, but is also completely subverting them, doing something totally new with it, whether you want to call it the female lens or whatever it is. What it is fabulous actors, Antonio Banderas, Nicole Kidman, Harris Dickinson. Like, it's the love triangle of the greatest chemistry I've seen in a really long time, and it's sexy and it's fun and it's just beautifully done. Like, yeah, thank you very much, Nicole, for continuing to deliver.
We turn to your picks, Leila, and I guess we're talking about the female lens in a very different way. Your first pick is a new documentary called Witches from Elizabeth Sankey. Talk us through this one a little.
Yeah, so Elizabeth Sankey's previously made documentaries that are kind of about cinema history. She's made one about romantic comedies. And this one I kind of thought would be a similar thing of like, looking at the way that witches have been portrayed throughout cinema, going all the way back to something like Wizard of Oz. But actually it's a much more personal film. And it's sort of her looking at her, she had a very traumatic birth and she had a lot of mental health problems that happened afterwards. And it's sort of using that to look at the way that women have been disbelieved, have been kind of not given autonomy over their bodies and like generally disregarded. And like the female experience is just you push to one side, like you're a problem, you're a witch. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's both a really interesting look at that sort of legacy in fiction and film, but a really, really moving story about a terrible personal experience she went through.
That is Witches from Elizabeth Sankey, the piano lesson from Malcolm Washington. This is a Netflix production. Tell us about this. This starts off with the sort of readings of carving on a heirloom piano, which obviously has deep and historical resonance. What happens here?
Yeah, it's sort of this cursed heirloom exists within this black family. It's an adaptation of an August Wilson play, and it's kind of coming from the Denzel Washington dynasty. His son, Malcolm Washington, directed it. His son, John David Washington, stars in it. And it's to do with a family kind of one generation removed from slavery who are kind of on the up and up and deciding that they want to kind of create a future for each other, create some form of like intergenerational wealth. And one way that they can do this is to sort of sell this piano.
Yeah.
But it gets quite supernatural at times, like tonally. I think some of the seams showed a bit, but it's an incredible production, amazing performances, as almost all of the actors in it have at one point been part of stage performances of it. So there's like a really rich history. Samuel L. Jackson, Ray Fisher, Daniel Deadwyler. What's not to love?
Again, we've got some knockout cast in all of our choices. There seems to be some knockout casting going on. We're going to end up at a strange place, and that place is Miller's Point. It is Christmas Eve at Miller's Point, from the director Tyler Taumina. This is your final show to push us headlong into the Christmas spirit. Does it get there? And what sort of Christmas are we going to have at Miller's Point, Leila?
It's a very strange film. I think from the trailer, it maybe looks a bit conventional, but it's sort of all of these big extended families coming back to their sort of family home, which it looks like it's going to be the last time that happens because the matriarch who lives there is going to have to go into some sort of assisted living facility. And the camera just kind of meanders around, looking at people eating salami sticks, or this person is kind of had too many eggnogs, or this person
there's a lot of close-ups of weird canapes.
Yeah.
Retro and weird canapes.
But it's weird because it sort of feels a bit weightless at the beginning, but as you go on to it, it feels like quite a profound statement on Christmas, because Christmas is almost always trying to recapture a family memory in a weird way. You're doing traditions because it's like, oh, we're trying to recapture something that happened before. And in itself, it also feels like you're watching a memory. So I thought it was really elegant and lovely. And it's quite an unusual film, but I think perfect Christmas viewing.
It does seem to. And just its movie poster is in the shape of a Christmas tree with sort of advent calendarish faces on it that you might want to open the window, as it were. But that's got a good 30 people on it. That advent calendar seems to have a cast of millions.
It does.
Cast of millions. Does it have as many jokes?
No. No, there's quite a few Nepo babies in this. We've got Francesca Scorsese,
Yes.
We've got Sawyer Spielberg. Yeah, not since The Father have I seen such a misleading poster in terms of like your people coming in for some cheery Christmas fare, and it's sort of this, nebulous art house movie about like the prisms of memory. But it is also a film that loves Christmas, so you won't not leave excited for Christmas.
The crumbs lead to the gingerbread house, and it is a Freudian nightmare that's in there rather than anything else. It's weird. I like it.
I like the idea of the unusual Christmas film as well,
Yeah.
because I love a cheesy Christmas film, but they're doing too much now.
Yeah.
Netflix, there are, 50 of them, so I think we should give chance for Christmas
Yeah, I
Eve at Miller's
understand.
Point.
You're right. Absolutely. I understand that there are an amazing amount of stuff. There's an amazing amount of stuff going to be washed online in the next few weeks.
All about a city gal who goes back to her hometown and falls in love with some folksy guy who sells Christmas trees, and they save his business, and then they learn the meaning of Christmas at the end.
Very original.
Yeah, okay. Leila's obviously script edited quite a few of them. Before we go, where can we read your Nicole Kidman piece?
That was in The Observer, so I think you can find it at The Guardian online. Yeah.
Nice. Leila Latif and Fernando Augesto Pacheco, thank you very much indeed. And thanks also, of course, to Steve McQueen. Blitz is available to watch on Apple TV and in select theatres right now. Monocle on Culture is produced by Sophie Monaghan-Coombs and Steph Chungu, and Steph also edits the show. We'll be back at the same time next week, but until then, from me, Robert Bounds, thank you for tuning in.